Tonight's show is brought to you by Glenn Smith, Chevrolet GMC in Opelika. Get ready to smile.
Hello, baseball fans. You're watching On Deck with Tyler Redmond.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Boy, oh boy, do we have some news to get to. 3 coaches are fired. Another team exits the playoffs. We're going to talk about them too. But of course, the focus tonight definitely on Kevin Seitzer, Sal Fasano exiting the coaching staff of the Braves. This comes as quite a shock because it was just last week that we heard that the Braves planned to keep their entire coaching staff. There wouldn't be any changes. They were all under contract through this next season, and we really didn't expect anything to change. We kind of threw it up as a lost year and said, well, if we didn't have 37 million injuries, we might have had a chance. But then again, here we are, and the Braves have changed their minds. This, of course, follows each coach's evaluation, and, of course, each team is deciding whether or not they want to continue with said coaches. The Braves have decided to terminate 3 as of now. We are following this as it happens. Of course, if something else does drop, we will get on here and cover it as soon as possible. That said, I would imagine this is kind of it. This is kind of where we're at because I don't see the Braves deciding, okay, we're going to decide on these 3 coaches, and then we're going to decide on this other coach or the manager or whatever the case may be. Out of the 3 here, I think the one that tops the list is the one that made the thumbnail, Kevin Seitzer. Just because, yes, the Braves definitely had a decline in hitting, but again, back to that original point of this is a lost year, we'll try it again next year, same approach. We had a lot of success in 2023 with virtually the same team. Who's to say that maybe if everybody's healthy, we can't replicate some of that success? That's what I would have thought would have happened. That's not what's going to happen. So, with that said, let's go into the decline from 2023 to 2024. You already know the eye test has told you what the decline is. You saw it firsthand if you watch these games. But the stats show it too. In 2023, the Braves ranked first in average, home runs, OPS, on-base percentage, and slug. With all of those respectively, they ranked in 2024 15th, 4th, 12th, 16th, and 9th. They were a very middle-of-the-road offense, not reflective at all of what they were in 2023. 33 points off the team average, 94 home run differential, 121 points off OPS, 35 off on base, and of course 86 off slug. That's a big difference from one year to the other. But again, a big difference, and to Kevin Seitzer's credit, is he didn't have the same players he was working with in 2023, nor the same caliber of players that he was working with in 2023. We expected a decline, of course, when Acuna got hurt. But even so, it just kind of piled on as injuries went on. I do believe that you would have seen a bit of a decline anyway, just because you're talking about a record-setting year in 23 versus a year in 24, where you are battling so many injuries. But even so, you're talking about going from a record-setting year to trying to do that again in 2024. I didn't think it was going to happen. I said that prior to the season. But then again, this kind of decline is not what Atlanta was looking for. So you may be wondering, well, Tyler, if all of these injuries were to have happened and you can't really blame Seitzer, why is he being terminated? And that's a fair question, a question that I have even contemplated myself. Why is this happening? Well, I think it's more along the lines of where the Braves want to go from here, because I don't think it has anything to do with the performance of Kevin Seitzer. In fact, the fact that the Braves have decided to terminate all 3 of these coaches so early tells me that they want them to find another spot. They want them to be successful. There's no hard feelings, that kind of thing. I think it's more about the approach that the analytics team want to go with, the front office wants to go with, and maybe implementing that is out of the scope of Kevin Seitzer. They may want to bring somebody in. They probably have somebody or a few people in mind, and I think you could see a coaching change fairly quickly here. I wouldn't be surprised at all if that were the case. So Kevin Seitzer, again, I don't think this has anything to do with the performance. You could blame it on the stats, sure, but I really think it has something to do with where the front office sees the team being at in 2025 and a lot of changes, because we've heard through the grapevine, I've talked about this before, but I've heard this a lot through the grapevine, is that we don't know exactly what Ronald Acuna Jr. will be come 2025. We don't know, number one, when he's getting back, but we also don't know what are the capabilities going to be once he's back, right? Is he going to be relegated to purely a DH, right? Is he going to be the same player he was? We don't know. We don't know. Maybe it's a year from now or 2 years from now that he's brought into the DH spot and removed from the outfield. But I also think that Kevin Seitzer's approach differs from where the Braves want to be in a couple of ways. We've all talked about it multiple times. We've all had this conversation of why do the Braves hit so many homers, but they don't, bunt a guy over, or they don't, get a hit when necessary. They don't drive runners in. It's all about the long ball. We've seen Chipper Jones talk about that exact thing in frustration, and more along the lines of today's game, not just the Braves. But we've heard that a lot over the past few years. It worked really well in 2023 up until the playoffs. Then all of a sudden it didn't work, right? And there's a lot of reasons to blame for that. I personally think the buy is still a problem. We're going to talk about that more later. But in terms of this situation, I think it is not so much the ability of Kevin Seitzer to get to the hitters and help them make adjustments or that kind of thing. I think it's more along the lines of the approach and more along the lines of where they want to be in 2025. Now, as for the following two coaches, forgive me, I don't know how to say the assistant hitting coach's name. I'm going to go with Bobby Magallenes is what I'm going to go with. I think that's just purely, again, with Seitzer about the approach. I think you have a hitting coach, you have an assistant hitting coach, you want to bring in a new staff, right? When you get a new president, you bring in a new staff with them. You don't continue the same thing. That's what I imagine is going on there. And again, they want to give these guys every chance to find success elsewhere. And with the performance you've seen from this offense over the past few years, a team would be dumb not to pick up a Seitzer, right? Especially a team on the rise, maybe a Detroit, for example, who are still in the playoffs right now, maybe a Baltimore, maybe even the Kansas City Royals, somebody like that who's on the cusp of breaking out, has a young team, maybe wants to hit for more power, that kind of thing. And again, we don't know what's happened behind closed doors. I've been around Kevin Seitzer. I've never really had a meaningful conversation with him, but I've been around the clubhouse. I don't think, again, that there's a negative energy there. I think it's purely because, again, the Braves said that they wanted to keep all these guys before today. That's what we thought was going to happen. They've looked at the evaluation. They've probably made a decision on, okay, we want to go from here to here, and that's what they're doing now. So that's my take on the whole Seitzer and his assistant hitting coach and all that. I just don't think there's we didn't hit this year, so we got to get rid of the hitting coach. That's the same to me as we didn't win a World Series, so we got to fire our manager. That to me is irrational. And it doesn't set up for success long term. You want to have a plan. Kevin Seitzer has been part of that plan. I think this has probably been in motion for a while. I think the evaluation probably said, okay, Seitzer, the approach of Seitzer is not going to get us where we want to be, right? And maybe there's been conversations had about, okay, how can we fix this? How can we adjust? And Seitzer may not have had the answer. And that's not a knock on him. It's just people have philosophies. Pitching coaches have philosophies. That's what makes each pitching coach or each hitting coach different. They have a philosophy. They have ability to coach the execution of said philosophy, but they also have that. Anytime you hear Leo Mazzoni, for example, who I have a good relationship with, anytime I talk to him, it kind of always gets back to that same old, less exertion, more pitching, right? More throwing the pitches. They all have those same kind of things that they revert back to, what they believe makes a team more successful. And I think the Braves want to go with a new approach. Same can be said for Sal Fasano. Sal Fasano, never heard a bad thing about the guy, never heard a bad thing about his coaching. I definitely think we haven't seen as much out of our catchers as we would like to. And I'd also say, looking across a couple state lines at William Contreras and what he's been able to do in the Brewers organization probably raises a few eyebrows as to why he wasn't able to perform that way behind the plate. Forget at the plate. We knew what he could do there. But what he could do behind the plate, you got to think that maybe the Braves are kind of looking at that going, this kid went from Atlanta to Milwaukee and figured this out very quickly. We haven't seen Sean Murphy be exactly what we had hoped he'd be prior to getting him or when we got him. We thought he'd be able to throw out runners really well. Obviously, he missed a lot of games. I want to say he played 70 to 80 games this year. So that's not fully Sal Fasano's fault, nor is, I think, the hitting Kevin Seitzer's. I think it's a mixture of things, and sometimes you got to remove one to bring in a component that's going to make the team better. That's just how it is. All of this kind of always goes back to Brian Snitker. Anytime you're talking about the coaching core, you're going to hear about Brian Snitker, and rightfully so. I think Snit gets a lot of unfair criticism for departments that he doesn't really have control over. Because think about it, at your workplace, right, you're going to have multiple departments, and then you're going to have one big manager. Baseball works the same way. You have a catching coach, you have a hitting coach, you have a pitching coach, you have a bullpen coach. You have all these different coaches in all these different departments that do different things. And a lot of times when a team isn't successful, the manager is the first one pointed out. Sometimes it's deeper than that. Sometimes it's the coaching core altogether. A lot of talk has been had about the Braves coaching core over the years. You just saw whitewash. You just saw Walt Weiss. Kevin Seitzer's right there. Ron Washington and EY. We all remember those two guys. Two guys that were, I would say, essential to the culture at the time. I don't think we've recovered from their loss. I will say that. I think what they brought to the team was unique, and we have not been the same since then. That's not to say anything against what Matt Tuiasosopo is capable of. I think that culture can be brought as well, right? We see players interacting with him. We just knew Ron Washington more, right? We're learning about Tuiasosopo. We're learning about these coaches as they come in. But a lot is not known so much about, again, what happens when cameras aren't on. We don't really know. We don't know what adjustments Seitzer has pointed out and spoken about over the years that has helped a player flip it on. I would say the one that really stood out to me was Josh Donaldson back in 2019. If you remember, Josh Donaldson was on the Braves early in 2019, didn't hit particularly well. He hit fine, but not to the expectation that we were hoping he would. All of a sudden, he goes out and works with Seitzer on a hitting machine on sliders and that kind of thing, and he flips it on. He turns into, frankly, the Josh Donaldson of old, and he turned into a really good player for the Braves. And I really think Kevin Seitzer has helped a lot of these guys be successful. I mean, 2023 doesn't just happen. That doesn't just fall out of thin air without a really good hitting coach, right? Look at what Olsen did that year. Look at what Acuna did that year, winning the MVP. Riley had an up year. And you go to this year, you face injuries. Those happen. But this was definitely a surprise. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I expected it, because I didn't, especially when we heard last week from Braves media that, hey, it looks like these are going to be your guys for 2025, so they're going to run it back and hope for a better year with better luck on the injury spectrum. But this is what we've been given, and it's unfortunate. I hate to see Seitzer go, because I really think that had he been given another year with a full healthy squad, he could have been successful. But that's not how this game goes, a lot of times. Sometimes you have to make those decisions. I will say, at least for the time being, I will say that I am thankful that Brian Snitker has not been let go, because I thought that would be very unfair. Brian Snitker is so essential to the culture of this team, to the ability to, he's got 40 years of baseball experience, and you don't get that overnight. That's just my take on it. I think he is the glue that's going to hold this together through whatever coaching changes are made. I think he works really well with the front office, and I think you're seeing changes that may not even need to be made, but you're seeing changes that they believe will make the team better. Seitzer, I think, is a really good hitting coach. He proved it in 2023. He proved it for the few years before that. 2024, a down year, and it results in the termination of his contract prior to it expiring, which, again, I don't think anybody expected, but it's where we are at. We're going to go to break really quick. When we come back, we're going to talk about the MLB playoffs as they stand right now, and you're not going to want to miss it, I promise you. Before we do that, though, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for notifications so that you can stay up to date with everything going on here at On Deck and, of course, with your Atlanta Braves.
Glenn Smith Chevrolet GMC presents a fantastic lineup of popular full-size SUVs and mid-size trucks. Compare side by side. Take your choice from new Chevrolet Tahoes and GMC Yukons, discounted up to $7,000 off. Or Chevy Colorado and GMC Canyons, discounted up to $5,000 off. Experience unmatched durability, powerful engines, and advanced technology. Choose your perfect vehicle today at Glenn Smith Chevrolet GMC in Opelika.
Get ready to smile.
You know, I'll be honest with you. The biggest thing we haven't done is hit, and I just don't think in baseball. You know, I always worry about 4 days off at the All-Star break, but everybody's going through that, not just a couple of teams. You know, it's hard to hit velocity when you haven't seen anything in 5 days. You know, so that's my biggest thing. We had a team that set all these records and everything offensively, and we didn't hit much in the postseason.
Yeah, I'll tell you why. Because you didn't execute. To me, it sounds like one big fat excuse, doesn't it? Well, we didn't win because of this outside factor. We didn't win because of that outside factor. We couldn't win because Rob Manfred did this. Or the Philadelphia Phillies grew some balls all of a sudden and realized that we were meant for playoff ball. You won the division. You were NL East champions. Here's another issue that could have potentially happened. They really wanted that strong start, right? Cincinnati and Atlanta to start the year. Didn't go well. After that, boom, shot out of a cannon and was one of the best teams in all of baseball. Did that correlate to, I don't know if it's complacency, because they were complacent. Oh, trust me. How many times did they punt those games? And Rob punted the games with the lack of urgency because they had the playoffs in mind. We have to be ready and have our guys right for the playoffs. Well, what the hell did that get you? Because I saw fucking vomit. So you can't take the same approach. I don't want to hear it. Game 63, game 85, game 101, game 112. That it's not about today, it's about later. Because that dumb attitude, once they started to, you know, run out of the fuel with all the winning and they came back to reality a little bit because there's natural peaks and valleys in a long season, they got complacent.
So that's how Philly fans are doing right now. Here's what I will say. I said last year multiple times that I didn't like the playoff format, but I also said it when the playoff format was introduced. We've talked about it extensively here. I think the playoff format is completely in favor of the wild card team, whichever one does advance. I think sometimes you will see the team that had a bye win, but it's rare. 3 of 4 teams last year, including the Braves, did not win, and they had the bye. You're talking, I mean, big teams. The only one that did was the Astros. Credit to them. But I saw last year and the year before that the Braves, you get to the playoffs, you take 5 days off, you wait for the wild card team to be decided, and when you get back, you're talking about a team with historic numbers. Let me just run this back. 276 team average, 307 home runs, 845 OPS, all for first in the game, not the league, the game. So I saw a team go from that to being lost at the plate. To being just completely overmatched by velocity when all year long they weren't. And again, as Snit said so eloquently in that video, Snit said that, look, I mean, you're talking going from 5 days. That's longer than the All-Star break. That is a problem for baseball players. Don't tell me it's not. And the reason I have such a problem with it, Philly fans, I actually really like Rhodes' stuff. I think he's very entertaining. This is not a shot. This is just what I see from Philly fans on a regular basis. It looks like my comment section when Philly fans get involved. But when I say, hey, I think there's a problem with the format and the Braves just lost, a lot of folks tend to, especially if their team just beat us or beat the Braves, a lot of fans and a lot of people in the media tend to say, oh, you're making excuses. When in reality, I'm seeing the difference from the team prior to that 5-day gap, which is a real difference. And the Phillies just learned about it. The Braves lost last year 3-1 in the series to Philadelphia. The Phillies just, of course, lost to the Mets. And guess what the difference was? 3-1 in the series. Schwarber, 2 for 16. Turner, 3 for 15. Harper, 4 for 12. Castellanos, 7 for 17. Harper and Castellanos had the best performance. It gets really downhill from there. Bohm, 1 for 13. Real Muto, 0 for 11. You heard that correctly in this series. Stott, 2 for 11. Wilson, 0 for 3. Marsh, 1 for 13. Man, that seems really familiar. It's almost like the Braves, I don't know, last year, the year before. So, Philadelphia, you just got what you asked for. You just got the bye. This was supposed to be your year. And credit to you. Credit to you. You were by far the best team in the division this year. I thought the Braves could have had a chance to chase you down had we been fully healthy, but you got off to the great start and you did not let up. You won the division. Credit to you. How does it feel? You're the best team in your division. You just got beat by not the second place team, the third place team. Are you ready to admit that there is a problem with the format? Because I've been saying it for years. And it's not because I'm a Braves YouTuber. It's because I have a problem with the format. And I'm not alone. There were problems with the format prior to it even being announced. Do you remember Trevor Bauer? Do you remember him coming out in that Momentum video? Regardless of what you think about Bauer, he spoke about this specifically, saying that this is not good. This is the most routine sport there is. And you're taking a few select teams, which, by the way, have earned an advantage. They have earned an advantage. And if they shouldn't earn an advantage, if you disagree with the fact that they should have an advantage, well, then what are we playing the regular season for? Because if it's me, I want a wild card spot every go-round. And I know the Braves didn't make it, but I still would sit on the fact that half the team was hurt. That said, you can't tell me that there aren't problems with the format. This is something that I'm really passionate about, and I'm watching it play out for yet another season. Let's look at it. The Mets, of course, just beat Philadelphia. The series between San Diego and LA, that's tied at 2-2 right now. They're going to a Game 5 tonight. We'll see what happens there. That's, of course, the deciding game. If the Padres win that, both National League teams that are playing in the NLCS will, of course, be from the Wild Card Series. And if you're curious, I'm pulling for the Padres. On the American League side, Detroit, a wild card team. They're leading Cleveland right now 2-1. Kansas City, they're leading the Yankees 2-1. So you may be out there asking, well, Tyler, we can complain about it all day long. What's going to change it? I'll tell you what's going to change it is if the Yankees and Dodgers don't make it to a league series. That's what's going to change it. A league championship series. That's what's going to change it. If you have Detroit and Kansas City on the American League side versus the Mets and the Padres. Now, granted, the Mets and the Padres, they're still kind of big time clubs. But if you have Detroit in there and Kansas City in there, Major League Baseball is going to start saying, ooh, I don't know about it. And you may be out there thinking, if you're on the other side of this, well, Tyler, it's competitive balance. I like seeing teams that, you know, are lesser than kind of compete. And I'm all for the Cinderella story, but I'm not for a manufactured Cinderella story. And that's what this is, because you can't tell me that Detroit was better than Philadelphia this year. But right now, if it ended right now, Detroit would make it. You can't tell me that the Mets were better than Philadelphia this year. I disagree with the expanded playoffs. I'm an old school guy. I disagree with it. But if you're going to do it, I'm all for expanding it further. Make everybody play the wild card round, but the top seed gets the bottom seed. That's how I would fix this. And if you don't want to do that, make the wild card round a doubleheader on day one. Very rarely does it go to 3 games anyway. Make it a doubleheader, and maybe you get it decided that way. If you split, it's 2 days as opposed to 3. And I think you fix a lot of your issues there. But that's just me. The reason they're not going to do it is because of money. There's no doubt about it. You get money from another 3 games compared to 1 as the old time goes. So that's now 12 games for all of Major League Baseball that you've added. That's attendance, that's television ratings, that's concessions, that's everything, advertising, all of that. So they're not going to do it. But I disagree with the way this has been implemented. I think it cost the Braves a real shot last year, for sure. I think it cost Philadelphia a shot this year. There's an olive branch for you. Can we agree that this is a problem? Because it is. And I'm not just saying it because my team, quote unquote, has been affected. I'm saying it because your team has now been affected. And the Yankees are by far better than anybody else over there in the American League right now. By far. And now, granted, Kansas City has a great club. I'll give them that. But you're mean to tell me that Kansas City, who's the 5 seed, by the way, Detroit is the 6 seed. You really want that on the American League side if you're Major League Baseball? You don't. And you're really risking right now a clean sweep of the wild card teams. That's where we're at. I don't agree with it. I think it's wrong. And I think at this point, you're looking at a situation where Major League Baseball is going to have to start owning up to the fact that, yeah, maybe the wild card teams really do have an advantage. When we get back, we're going to go through the comments section. We're going to go through as many as we can. I got to get out of here fairly quickly, probably right around 6 o'clock. So just be aware of that. Remember, Super Chats do get priority. We'll answer as many as we can, but I can't guarantee anything. And if you would, a lot of you guys are watching right now, you haven't liked the video. That really does help us get that out there and really does help us make this channel bigger, better, and hopefully more entertaining. So thank you again for tuning in. We'll be right back. When we get back, we're going through the comments.
Glenn Smith Chevrolet GMC offers popular full-size trucks with a legacy of strength and durability. Side by side, the new Chevrolet Silverado and GMC Sierra 1500s, discounted up to $13,000 off. Or big, heavy-duty Chevy and GMC 2500s, discounted up to $8,000 off. Rugged durability, powerful engines, and advanced technology. Choose your perfect truck today at Glenn Smith Chevrolet GMC in Opelika.
Get ready to smile.
Welcome back, everybody. Again, thank you for being here. Reminder just to like the video. Would really appreciate that. Get this out there. Get this a bigger audience. And, of course, we're really trying to grow. So thank you for being here on a random, Thursday night. We're not going to be here too long. I got to get back to work. So we're going to answer as many questions as we can, as quickly as we can. But please do remember to like the video and subscribe if you have not already. And also, remember, Super Chats do get priority. Let's go ahead and go to Yasuke. Should be interesting to see who gets the job. Well, yeah, I guess, the grieving time is over, and now we got to talk about who's going to get the job for hitting coach, for catching coach. BMAC is available. There's always that idea. He's not working anywhere, I don't believe. I see a mention for Chipper, Braves. That's his name, Braves. It says, bring in number 10, the man, Chipper Jones. With all of his, I hate to use the word complaining, earlier this year, I'd be interested to see what he'd do with it. I think he would definitely implement change, and I think if anybody wants to be involved, I don't know if he wants to be involved every day and have to travel and all of that like a normal hitting coach would have to do, but I would certainly take any kind of help we could get from the Hall of Famer, Chipper Jones, for sure, and I would really enjoy that. I would enjoy a staff, and I mean, this is, Field of Dreams level picking here, but if Chipper was the hitting coach, BMAC was the catching coach, and all of a sudden maybe Tim Hudson or somebody was the pitching coach, I think you could have a very interesting staff. Now, the problem is a lot of players used to do that. Bob Gibson, for example, was a pitching coach for the Braves back in the 80s. Joe Torre was, of course, the manager. Former players. And you do have some former players that do that, but rarely is it players that are good anymore. Most of the time are elite, I'd say. You still have some that were good. Aaron Boone, for example, we saw we've seen other players take that spot as well. David Ross, for example. But those players, again, very rarely are they elite, especially at the pitching coach level. Most of the time they're going to be managers. So I'd be curious to see if you saw a former player get back in there. It'd just be interesting. Again, BMAC would be a really good catcher's coach. I think he'd be a good coach, period. Chipper as a hitting coach, the problem I think you'd have with Chipper as a hitting coach is not everybody's Chipper Jones, right? I think he could help. I definitely think he could make some assistance. I don't know how much I just don't know how well he coaches. I don't know. He's been a hitting instructor for the Braves for a few years. I mean, that's a natural transition, but I don't know if Chipper would be open to it. I don't know if he'd really want to do the travel. That I think is the biggest change. Subi Sayan says, "To fudge happened." Yeah, that's I want to use that at some point. A lot happened. A lot. Obviously, Seitzer, Magallenes, and Fasano all gone. Trinity Clark says, "What's up, Tyler? We should have kept Uncle Ronnie and Eric Young Sr. They were our heartbeat to the coaching staff." I don't disagree with it. I think in a perfect world, we would have kept both of them. Matt Tuiasosopo is great, but other than that, I mean, it's been a tough transitional period, and we all wondered what that would look like. We're seeing it. We'll see what happens. Let's see. Vision says, "Man, I miss Wash and EY." Yeah, I've gotten that comment a lot this year. Brandon Edwards asks a really good question. Will 2025 be Brian Snitker's final year? Well, that is what he is under contract for currently. It would make a lot of sense. He is getting up there in age. He doesn't have anything to prove. He'll have one more shot at maybe winning another World Series. And you can't ask for much more than that if you're Snit. I mean, you really can't ask for much more than that. He's had a great tenure in a Braves uniform. But beyond that, he's had a great tenure in baseball. He has had 40 long years with this organization. And you can't ask for much more than that if you're a coach. If he wins another World Series, I think you could argue Braves Hall of Fame. I think you could argue a statue in the park. The Baseball Hall of Fame would be a tough get, but he is a two-time World Series champ, and a lot of managers that are in there don't have that. That said, I don't think he's got the cumulative stats that would be necessary, like your Bobby Coxes, who did it at the major league level for so long and that kind of thing. But again, two-time World Series champ, I don't think the Baseball Hall of Fame would do it. But it would be interesting to see that case. I think you could argue it. I don't know if it would go through necessarily, but a lot could happen. Hay says scapegoat. I'm with Corey Carter. I don't know that we needed a scapegoat. I think if we had said that, look, injuries took their toll and it is what it is for 2024. We're going to turn the page. We're going to focus on 2025 with a fully healthy roster, hopefully. I don't think anybody would have really batted an eye. If we were, the Chicago White Sox, I think we would need a scapegoat. And that's not a Chicago joke. That's just they were the worst team in baseball this year. And it was clear that they were the worst team in baseball. And the blame there goes to the owner. It goes to the manager. It goes to the general manager. It goes to the players. It goes to the coaches. When you're that bad, you need a scapegoat to get you out of it. Usually you fire your manager or you fire somebody to somehow make it seem like you're going to implement change. That's when you're that bad. This year, I don't think we needed a scapegoat. I think, the fans kind of understood what it was. We went into the playoffs kind of knowing, and I hate to say it, but we went into the playoffs kind of knowing what it would be. We knew that the Padres we were outmatched, I'd say, and mostly because our guys are hurt. When Riley didn't come back, that's kind of when I knew. And I never said it here. I never wanted to say it here. I was holding out hope. But logistically speaking, you're kind of looking at it going, yeah, it's adding up, And I said multiple times on the channel that whatever we do in the playoffs, the fact that we made the playoffs was, a miracle on ice. I've said that plenty of times. But again, I don't think we needed a scapegoat. That's what I would say. I think this is a opportunity for the Braves to make a change that they deem necessary, even though on the outsider perspective, we probably don't. They probably have a guy that they're interested in. And when we find out who it is, I think we'll know more. And of course, I'll get on here, I'll do some research, find out what I can and try to piece it together. But it is a surprise. There's no doubt about that. Trinity Clark says maybe we can get Smoltzy and our other homegrown retired players to be a consultant this year like we had last year. Well, Smoltzy, he's on his TV deal. I don't think he's doing it, but so is Glavin. I think Glavin would be more of a possibility if you were going to do that, but even then, I think he's got a pretty sweet deal up in the press box. Chipper, I think, is interesting. I don't think it happens, and I don't think they can pay him enough for him to give up that much time unless he just purely wants to. Those kind of jobs don't demand the salary of a manager, and frankly, most managers don't demand the salary of a Chipper Jones. That's what I would say. I think if you're going to go that route, you got to go more along the lines of a Jeff Francoeur, a BMAC, a Tim Hudson, and that kind of thing. That said, Tim Hudson doesn't have a job opening right now. Rick Kranitz is still employed. So we'll see what happens. Josh Green says Snitker's son with the Astros would be a great replacement. He's been great with Houston. I think that would be a good addition. I don't know if he would leave Houston just because they've been very successful too, unless, I don't know. Playing with your dad would be pretty, or, coaching with your dad would be cool. But then again, you fire a guy who had a lot of success in 2023, you bring in your kid in 2025 or for 2024. I don't know how that looks. I don't know if they really care. I don't really care, but anytime you bring in a family member, it's going to get kind of sketchy. Trinity Clark, we should go after Martin Prado or McCann to see if they want to coach. Martin Prado, that's a name I haven't heard in a long time. One of my favorites growing up. Yeah, I'd be interested in that. I think he could be I don't know if he'd be a good hitting coach, but he could be a really good just bench coach, or first base coach or something like that. That would be kind of interesting. Critical Thinker says it would really suck if Seitzer ended up in Philly, New York, or LA. Well, luckily, I think those are all kind of accounted for. I think New York would be your best bet, and even then, I don't know. I don't know if they would do that. I think he's going to come up with somebody on the American League side more than likely, but we'll see. Braves #1 says, why did Sal Fasano have to go? I don't think he had to go. I think they look at where we're at, and they look, again, I mentioned earlier, you're looking across the aisle over at the Brewers, and you're seeing William Contreras, who we could not teach how to catch. He could not catch in a Braves uniform. Do you remember? We quote unquote could not wait for him to learn. We didn't have the time. And I'm sure Sal Fasano had some influence in that decision to trade him and move on. And you look at Sean Murphy. Sean Murphy hasn't been exactly what he was touted when we got him. I think it's a change that may not be necessary, but it's a change that they look and say, hey, we can improve there and we can improve there. And to do that, we're going to have to bring in this guy and this guy. I think this may be more about who we're going to get in than who we're going to get out, which all credit to Seitzer and Fasano. We don't know what the replacement is. And we may not, it may be somebody from within. I don't know. But we'll have to judge it at that point. Oh, Lord. We're going after Philly fans because I went after him myself. Blake Newsom says Yankees and Dodgers are both one win away from advancing. They're also one win away from going home, I believe. So you have the potential, we'll see. Arcia to the bench must happen. That's interesting. A lot of folks talking about Adames. This has been something that's been going on for a while. We've done a video on Adames. If you're out there and you want to hear my thoughts on Adames, I don't want to bog it down because I only got a few minutes here. Adames, good player, going to demand a big salary. Don't know if the Braves are going to do it. I also think Arcia will be much better when Acuna gets back in the lineup, when Riley gets back in the lineup. I just think it will naturally flow into Arcia better than it did this year for sure. That said, you can always improve. I don't know that this is the year to do it. Adames is going to be highly sought, and we'll have to see what happens. But I personally don't know that I view Adames as a $30 million guy, especially when Riley's making $20 million, Olsen's making $20 million, Acuna's making $10 million, Strider's making somewhere in the teens, Ozzy's making $7 million. I don't know that you are going to do yourself any favors if you... if you bring in Adames who's going to demand 30. and he's going to get 30. I don't think the Braves are going to do that. Captain Spartan says, do you think we could offload Bryce Elder, Dylan Dodd, and Darius Vines for a former top shortstop prospect that hasn't worked out to compete with Arcia? I think we'll keep Arcia, just bring competition. That's not a bad idea. I think offloading a Bryce Elder, Dylan Dodd, or Darius Vines, or that package for that is kind of irresponsible, because I think that package could get you a solid bullpen arm that could actually, forget about competition, could actually give you something in the playoffs or something down the stretch. I think that kind of package, if you're going to include that many, I hate to say high-ranking prospects, but we don't have a lot of them, and Bryce Elder is a former All-Star. I know we don't value that anymore, but I'm just saying he is a former All-Star. Dylan Dodd is a guy who's been given opportunities. He's had success with those. He's had the opposite of success with those. Darius Vines is a guy who's only been given a few opportunities and is yet to be able to really remain in the starting rotation. I think at some point you're going to have to make some decisions on Bryce Elder, Dylan Dodd, or Darius Vines, because otherwise you're going to see, what happens. You remember Colby Allard? We eventually traded him for not that much. We traded Tucker Davidson for not all that much. And I think at this point, you're kind of getting to that point with these three guys where their value is going to drop, and you didn't get the deal done before you should have, and now you got to walk away with what you got. And I think we're getting to the point where a decision is going to have to be made. I think a guy like A.J. Smith-Shawver is a guy who's really got the potential to be in your rotation. And it didn't surprise me at all when we decided to go to him in the playoffs. I know he didn't have his best day. Far from it. I am aware of that completely. But I still think he was the right choice out of the decision, out of who we had. Because you didn't want to go use your bullpen in case you played a game 3. You didn't want to, you couldn't go to a large majority of your starting rotation. And you had to give it your best go with your best hand available. A.J. Smith-Shawver, I believe, not only me, but I think the Braves view him as the top prospect. And that's not universal for everybody. A lot of folks like some other guys. I think A.J. has got a lot of success in his future, and we'll have to see kind of what happens. Let's see. Oh, Lord. Blake Newsom just being a negative Nancy, wanting the Yankees and the... I can't believe what I am reading. Wanting the Yankees and the Dodgers to go beyond. He says sadly, but I look, they very well may. But the fact that they're on the brink to the 6th seed when they should be winning 5-, they should be winning 3-1 like the Mets did. That just tells you that it's the playoff format is at fault. That's what I'm saying. Let's see. Chuck Raymer says, Willie Adames to Braves 2025. I don't think so. We kind of got into that. I don't think so. If they can't get Adames, trade for Bo Bichette. I don't hate that. I don't know what you're going to trade that's going to warrant a Bo Bichette deal. But I could be wrong. I just don't think that's where we're at. I think you're going to see more along the lines of a under the radar deal. But that's just me. I don't know. I think personally it's a situation where we don't have a ton of prospect capital. We don't have a ton of capital at the major league level either to trade. I don't know what you're going to give the Blue Jays that they're going to say, oh, yeah, this guy that we've been raising from our farm system up that, yeah, we have all the belief in the world in. I don't know if they're going to do it when anybody that's bidding for Bo Bichette across the country is going to bring more to the table than the Braves. And that's really the battle that the Braves are at. They kind of got to get to a point where they're rebuilding their farm system. So not only they have guys that they can rely on in the farm system, but also guys that they can trade for a certain guy at a given time, right? Come the trade deadline. So it wouldn't surprise me if not maybe this year, maybe the following, you start seeing them, hey, we're going to focus on our farm system a little more. Because we have our guys at the big league level signed, committed. They're not going anywhere. We're going to focus on our farm system, and any trades we do are going to be to kind of refill our farm system because it is down. It's been down for a while. Why is it down? Because all the guys that made it worth anything in the minors have come up to the majors, and the Braves, whether it be through the draft, isn't where you get everybody, and you've drafted fairly well, but even then you are usually at the bottom of the totem pole in the draft and that kind of thing. The Critical Thinker says, Tyler, do you think we could bring up someone from the minors at shortstop? From the minors, I think Nacho Alvarez would be your best bet, and I think he's good at his level, but I don't think he's good enough to overtake Arcia. I think if you were to put those two in competition, Arcia would blow him away, as of right now. As Corey Carter put it, in terms of the Adames, he's a 248 career average hitter. I don't have the stats in front of me. Thank you, Corey. He hits a little bit more homers than Arcia, but the difference between that and $3 million Arcia is not that much. That's why I feel the way I do. HSK. You're going to have to spell that out for me. It's been a long day, Steven. But I'd like to hear it. Brandon Edwards says, rumors been going around for a year. Sounds like he wants out. Are we talking about Bichette or are we talking about Adames? Yeah, okay, so you're talking about Bichette. He may want out, but his contract is still going to dictate it. And even if he wants out, you still have other teams that are definitely looking at him at least, because the shortstop market this year is slim to none. It's not like a year or two ago where there were, Ha-Seong Kim. Okay, we'll talk about him in a second. You're in a spot now where the market for shortstop is not exactly plentiful in terms of free agency. So you're talking about a trade. A lot of guys are going to go straight to Bo Bichette. Name value, they know what he can do, and he's definitely a stopgap. But even so, you're going to have to compete in a bidding war with who knows who, and I don't know that the Braves can really compete with anybody. Ha-Seong Kim, he's signed to a $28 million deal, 4 years. So his average annual value, it'd be about $7 million a year, which isn't terrible. 233 average though, 11 homers compared to Arcia. Let's just take a look. Again, 233 average, 11 homers compared to Arcia. He's got a 218 average, which is less, but he's got 17 homers, and he's making less money. So again, a lot of people like to point at Arcia and say, that guy stinks. But really, when you look at how much he's making, he's playing a kind of not above average, but definitely if you include all of the sum of what he's done in a Braves uniform, he's played really well for the money he's making. And I don't see the Braves moving on from him yet. I just don't. I think they're going to let him complete his contract, and until they get a trade that makes sense, they're not going to do it. And I don't think they're going to be able to get Bo Bichette for an Orlando Arcia. I just don't think so. He's not a free agent until 2026, so he will play through this next year. That will be it. Now, at that point, you may see the Braves make a move at on shortstop, especially if Orlando has a similar year to what he had this year. I think at that point you may see something happen, but not until he's completed his contract. And again, it kind of times out well because you know that the Braves were looking at, okay, what kind of contract do we want to give Arcia? And how long of a contract do we want to do? And what do the free agent classes look like for 2026? I'm sure that that's what they were thinking. So let's look at 2026 MLB free agents. I'm doing this completely right now, so bear with me. Let me look at, these are infielders. Let's see. Trevor Story has an opt-out. He's with Boston. The Braves could try it. Maybe they get a lesser deal, but his opt-out's $25 million. Anthony Rizzo. Give me shortstops, please. Thank you. All right, so here's shortstops. Trevor Story, Bo Bichette, Luis Rengifo, Tommy Edman, Willie Castro, Kyle Farmer, Miguel Rojas, which I don't hate that, ironically. David Fletcher, who we're familiar with. We're still paying on that deal, by the way. He's still technically signed by us. Jorge Mateo and Tyler Wade. So not a big class of shortstops there. Second base, I guess we can look at you have Chris Taylor, Luis Arias, Isaiah Kiner Falefa, Ha-Seong Kim, who somebody else mentioned, Brendan Rodgers, Jorge Polanco, which I would like that if he can transition to shortstop. Ozzy, of all people, I hope we re-sign him. And then, of course, Orlando, who's listed as a second baseman. So, there's a lot of different ways you could explore it. There's not a ton of free agents in 2026 either, but compared to this upcoming year, I don't know that it's any less. I like Tommy Edman. I see you, Corey. I like Tommy Edman. There's a lot of guys there in 2026 that I think could happen, but we'll see. Indomitus King, I don't know what that is. King says Braves trying to get Willie Adames. Is that a real thing? The rumor's out there, but it's just that. It's a rumor. Guys, we got only a few more minutes, so get your comments in. I'm going to answer as many rapid-fire ones as I can. Corey Carter wants to talk about the Dirty Birds. They've been really good lately, and I can't believe it. They're roping me back in, Corey. They're doing it because they've been so putrid over the past few years that it's just kind of been like, all right, how did they lose today has been the attitude, and I don't think I'm alone in that. Of course, they beat the Bucks, which is huge, in overtime. They beat the Saints. They almost beat the Chiefs. Arguably, they should have beat the Chiefs. It came down to that non-pass interference call, which was a joke. They beat the Eagles. They lost to the Steelers. They got what, 2 losses? What are they? I think they're top of the division, aren't they? Yeah, 3-2, top of the division. We'll see what happens. They got the Panthers next, which they should blow past them. And of course, after that, they got the Seahawks. So we'll see if it lasts. I don't put anything past the Falcons. But Kirk Cousins has been really good. He's finding his groove. We all know about Koo and the game that he walked off the other day against the Saints. So, yeah, they've been really good. Sports Daily says Seitzer or these other coaches were not the problem. The problem was injuries and Snicker's lack of ability to project winning baseball. Lack of bunts, lack of steals, the lack of moving base runners. So those 3 things you just mentioned, the lack of bunts, the lack of steals, the lack of moving base runners. Have you given any thought that all those involve hitting? Just going to throw that out there. Chipper said it best on Twitter a couple of months ago. And I agree with him, but that's the game now. And I think that's more, Chipper wasn't blasting Snit, and I don't think he was blasting Kevin Seitzer. I think he was purely blasting the current product. And there's reasons it's that way. It's not just that hitting is different, pitching is different, right? Why are hitters trying to hit bombs all the time? Why are they trying to do it? Well, number one, they get rewarded for that in their pay. So that's a big reason. You can hit 50 homers and have a 190 batting average and you're going to make $40 million. Just is what it is. So that's what I would say. That's one problem. But another problem is pitchers are throwing 103 miles an hour. And it's hard to just, I'm going to hit it the other way when you're talking 104 at your chest or 104 at your chin, right? So you're choked up and you're looking to do one thing, and it's hit bombs. So that's what I would say. Tyler, how much leash does Murphy have going forward? Well, let's see. Hang on a second. Hold on. You're talking about Sean Murphy, right? How much leash does Sean Murphy have? I would say he's got about, 2024. He's got about 5 years. That's what I would say. 5 years and, I don't know, 70 million. That's about the leash I'd say. They're not walking away from him anytime soon. Sports Daily, you're the last question I'm answering. That's the thing. You do that when you're not hitting. You can walk, steal a base, hit sac flies, lay down a bunt. I don't disagree with you. I think that they're about to change their approach at the plate. I don't think Snit is the problem. And to be honest with you, I get the Snit hate a lot. I've defended him a lot this year. I don't mind doing it. I think it's the right call, and not everything is Snit's fault. I think they're attacking the hitting problem right now. And I know there are times when you don't hit, for sure. But all in all, the Braves had 40 injuries this year. They still made it to the playoffs. And that's in a large part due to Snit. And you can disagree with it, but they've had to dance around injuries. They've had to call up guys. you know, it is what it is. Here we go. The snit hate has arrived, and that's my cue to leave, everybody. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Really do appreciate it. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so that you can stay up to date with everything going on here at On Deck, and of course with the Atlanta Braves. I've got to run, but I also want to give one more thank you to Glenn Smith Chevrolet GMC in Opelika. Get ready to smile. They have been great sponsors for this channel all year long. We really appreciate them. We really appreciate you, and the best way you can support the channel is, of course, by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and hitting the bell for notifications so that you know when we go live, when we drop new content, when we do pretty much anything. We would love it if you did that, and we're going to close this out by, of course, reacting to Phillies fans. Enjoy.
You know, I'll be honest with you. The biggest thing we haven't done is hit, and I just don't think in baseball. You know, I always worry about 4 days off at the All-Star break, but everybody's going through that, not just a couple of teams. You know, it's hard to hit velocity when you haven't seen anything in 5 days. You know, so that's my biggest thing. We had a team that set all these records and everything offensively, and we didn't hit much in the postseason.
Yeah, I'll tell you why. Because you didn't execute. To me, it sounds like one big fat excuse, doesn't it? Well, we didn't win because of this outside factor. We didn't win because of that outside factor. We couldn't win because Rob Manfred did this. Or the Philadelphia Phillies grew some balls all of a sudden and realized that we were meant for playoff ball. You won the division. You were NL East champions. Here's another issue that could have potentially happened. They really wanted that strong start, right? Cincinnati and Atlanta to start the year. Didn't go well. After that, boom, shot out of a cannon and was one of the best teams in all of baseball. Did that correlate to, I don't know if it's complacency, because they were complacent. Oh, trust me. How many times did they punt those games? And Rob punted the games with the lack of urgency because they had the playoffs in mind. We have to be ready and have our guys right for the playoffs. Well, what the hell did that get you? Because I saw fucking vomit. So you can't take the same approach. I don't want to hear it. Game 63, game 85, game 101, game 112. That it's not about today, it's about later. Because that dumb attitude, once they started to, you know, run out of the fuel with all the winning, and they came back to reality a little bit because there's natural peaks and valleys in a long season, they got complacent.
Baseball fans, make sure you like and share this video and subscribe to this channel. As always, thank you for your support.